Hi, welcome to part 3 on Pauline Interviews. Near-death experience is the topic, and my guest is Diane Goble. Now, Diane, we were talking during our break, and you said you have a problem with the description of near-death experience, and that is because...
Well, people who almost have an accident or some sort of incident where they might have died if it had gone this further, and they call it a near-death experience, but PMH Atwater, who researches this, always says you have to put that hyphen in there. The near-death experience means that somebody had an out-of-body and deeper experience, as opposed to somebody who almost had an accident.
Yeah.
So the newspapers sometimes, you know, headline near-death experience, but it's somebody who almost got hit by a car.
And it's completely different.
Right.
It's nothing.
Just not even.
It's not what we're talking about. It's not even in the ballpark. Because I was telling you when we took a little break here that I had near-death experience, but it was the kind that you didn't have. Yeah, when we almost got hit, and thank God. And I feel that's kind of a spiritual thing too, because
it does.
It wasn't my time.
Yeah.
It wasn't my time. I mean, it could have happened.
It's kind of a warning.
A warning. You pay attention.
Pay attention to something.
That's true.
Like you get your car fixed.
Yeah, right. Get those tires off and changed. So we talked about in part 1 about your experience. In part 2, we talked about it really changed your life. And at the time you had it, there was no help for you. I mean, nobody had been talking about what is a near-death experience. It was in 1971. But since that time, and you said it was in the 80s that you read Ruth Montgomery's book.
Late 80s.
And then another person who's talked extensively about it, who's well known as an expert, would be Dr. Raymond Moody. And I believe that he was actually a medical doctor.
He's a psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Somebody had told him about an experience and it interested him, and then he started looking into it. And
wasn't he even afraid to even talk about it until later because he was afraid that people would think
he was well, the medical people and the researchers got some bad rap for even looking into this because it was so, you know, science can't prove any of this, so I can't prove this happened to me.
But fortunately people are a little more open-minded now. There are tons of books, and when you had that near-death experience they gave you knowledge. They said that, and that was one of your gifts, to come back with this knowledge so that you could help other people. And so how have you taken that knowledge and helped other people?
Well, like I said, I went back to school and became a psychologist, and stress management was the main topic that I worked on because I realized that so many people were under stress that their lives were a mess. And so back way before people even knew what stress was, I was, you know, working with companies, consulting and helping them deal with employee stress and that sort of thing. But when I was in school, I had this, first of all, I was a single parent with 3 now teenagers, and going back to school, going back to college, working. You know, how did I manage all that and still study? I didn't need to study so much because and I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize this until later that all this information that I needed to know was what I was studying, and it all came back to me. And it's like, how do I know this stuff? Even physics, you know, I had no interest in physics.
So it triggered, when you opened the book, it triggered a memory.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got an A in a course that I only, you know, leafed through the book because I didn't have time, and I never looked at my test scores, and I had an A, and, you know, I was always on the dean's list, and I didn't think I was smart enough when I was younger to continue college, and here I was breezing through it when I had all this other, you know, life going on around me, and it didn't dawn on me until years later that it was because I had all that knowledge, that I had gained all that knowledge, and it came back to me.
Now, you also worked in hospice, didn't you?
Yes, back in the 1990s I started, because my mother was aging, and I thought that I should know that stuff, but then I got involved, and by then I knew it had all come back to me. This was maybe 5 years after I realized that this happened to other people too, and so I got involved with hospice, and still am to some degree.
Well, I can imagine how comforting that would be, like, to know that you'd already had that experience that they're going to have, and to comfort them. A lot of people that you counsel, do they believe you, or they...
Well, through hospice I wasn't allowed to talk about it.
Oh, because hospice I thought was quite spiritual. They, so you could not talk about it.
Not so much.
No.
They have their boundaries, and
Yeah.
I crossed their boundaries, and
Oh, I
so
see.
I did have problems with
Pretty hard.
hospice. So that's why I went out on my own and did my own thing. But I'm still involved with hospice
Okay.
in various ways. I work with Death with Dignity,
Mhm.
Compassion and Choices, and
Mhm.
so I'm still involved in all of that through my website, my blog. And
I think they're a wonderful group, but I guess
Oh,
I can
yeah.
understand because you're bringing your bias and they haven't
It
had
would
that
be
experience.
like I had a
yeah.
religion and I was trying to
Exactly,
convert
yeah. They
people
try to
and-
keep it pretty open. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a hospice is a wonderful association.
Yeah.
Now, you've authored several books, and I love the title of this one, Beyond the Veil. That's a great, and by
And
that
that-
you mean, obviously, on the other side, right? The veil is the veil that's separating us from the other side.
Right, and that's all it is. When that veil
Mhm.
drops, when you die, when your body dies, that veil drops and you see
Mhm.
what's really there.
When
The
did
curtain falls.
Right, and there's even more to it that, because we know there are different dimensions that people move on to. So when did you author this book?
This is the latest version of an ongoing series of
Uh-huh.
books and works that I've done, and it's to help patients and caregivers deal with their end of
Mhm.
life. It's not, although I talk about my experience in the beginning of the book, it's not about my experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how to prepare yourself emotionally and spiritually for your last days.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a lot of exercises and meditations and, you know, information that will be helpful people.
Is this sold in all bookstores and online as well?
Yes.
And I like Beyond the Veil, that is also your website, isn't it?
Yes, it
Beyond
is.
the Veil is a website to find out more about what Diane does. And I wanted to ask you something.
.net, by the way.
.net.
BeyondTheVeil.net.
Now, you belong, I found you through a group called IANDS, which is International Association for Near-Death Studies. That's a great group, isn't it?
Mhm.
And when did you become involved with them and what do they do?
Back in the 90s, I came across them, I guess online somehow,
Mhm.
I don't remember how. But they have support groups
Mhm.
for people who have had near-death experiences. They do education. They work with doctors and hospitals trying to get the information out there, and they're
Mhm.
a wonderful group.
Mm-hmm. And so people obviously can find them online.
Mhm.
And I did mention that also there are scientific groups and this is a supportive group. They're also supportive and investigative, probably?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have a research arm
Mhm.
through the University of Virginia, I
Mhm.
believe, and yeah.
So I think nowadays, if people have these experiences, there's plenty of support, and it's something that people need not be afraid to talk about, that they're going to wind up thinking they're crazy and wind up in a hospital, some kind of a
They
mental
even have
hospital.
a retreat now for people who have had
Oh, they do?
experiences. Once a year they have a retreat where,
Oh.
you know, because to help people work through
Right.
having had the experience.
Yeah, just because there are support groups doesn't mean that you're completely okay. You still need to express it and see what happened to you, because I can't imagine, what that would be like to be dead one minute and back in your body the next.
It's a very
what?
profound experience. There's nothing easy about it. It totally blows
Mhm.
everything you thought was true.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to rebuild yourself
Mhm.
to fit that reality in with this one.
Yes.
And a lot of people are upset that
Yeah.
they came back.
Yeah.
A lot of them, I mean, I remember reading a story about a guy who had a heart attack and he almost killed the doctor who resuscitated him.
Oh, wow.
He said, I was fine.
Why'd you do
Why'd
that?
you bring me back?
Yeah.
So to then be in the world and it's like you're hit with gravity and you know you're stuck in the body, whereas
Mhm.
before you were completely free. You
Mhm.
didn't have a body to deal
Yeah.
with, and yeah, coming back is not.
It's hard because when you're a baby and you're born, it's a gradual thing, and then you're birthed, and there you are in your physical body. But you go from your physical back to your spiritual, which you truly are, and then back to your physical. I can't even imagine. Well, I'd already asked you in the other part, were you afraid of death before? You said yes, and I asked you if you're afraid now. You said no. And now I'm going to ask you to end the show is, are you glad this happened to you?
I am. And it's certainly been an interesting journey. It's like I've learned that this is why we come here, is to grow spiritually, and it's our soul work that we're doing here. And we get caught up in what is going on with the drama in our lives, and really that's nothing.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not what it's about. And once we get over that and start working on our spiritual path, life becomes very different. And so I'm really glad it happened, and I think it was, I believe in, you know, we planned this before we come in, and in this life,
Yes.
my soul decided it was going to wake up
Yes.
finally in a lifetime,
Uh-huh.
and that's one of the things that we need to do is wake up and realize that this isn't all there is.
Yours was a more dramatic wake up. I've been reading books, so I've waken up my soul, if that's how I'd say it, because I don't know, I've been gravitating to books and trying to, so kind of, I'm a searcher, a seeker, so I read books, so that's a lot easier than having a near-death experience. Say, come on, wake up,
do
Diane.
it vicariously
Yes,
through those of
Yeah.
us who have had
So I'm
the
glad I'm
experience.
having this experience, although you know, if I had your experience, who knows, I can only speculate, but I appreciate you sharing, because that's, that was
And my
something
main
to share.
message to tell people is that we don't die.
We don't die.
We just step out of our body and we go on, and don't be afraid of death. Don't jump into it. I mean, I don't advocate
No, we don't want
jumping
to,
into
yeah.
it, but yeah, it's not this scary thing. It's not the end of everything.
Yeah.
And we do all get together again.
Mhm.
We're part of a soul group, if you want to call
Mhm.
it that. I don't believe in soulmates, but
Well, soulmates could be anything.
We are
Yeah.
soulmates on the other side,
Yeah.
and we agreed to meet in this lifetime and
Mhm.
do this, what we're doing right now,
Right.
to help educate people and help them onto their spiritual path.
I can't get any better ending this part 3 than what you just said, Diane, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you for watching Pauline Interviews.